Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Monday After Action Report. Uh, Report slash podcast. This is your host Bill from Dragon Tooth Miniatures, and I have had an amazing weekend slash amazing Christmas weekend. So let's get down to business. I have been, interestingly enough, had the great opportunity to meet up with one of my very good friends. We haven't played Warhammer in a little bit, so he is a little bit rusty, especially with the faction that he played today, which was Space Marines. More specifically, he played a very, very deadly Raven Guard successor chapter. So what he chose as his successor chapter tactics were +1 to hit characters and +1 to wound characters. So, for those of you that are not familiar with Tyranids, that makes this particular Space Marine combination extremely deadly to Tyranids, because most of our characters heavily rely on their toughness and their wounds to live. They don't really get access to like some really powerful like survivability relics. It's more of they inherently are monstrous creatures. Therefore, they're either T7 or I don't think there's a character that's T8. I believe they're either T6 or T7. They've got a lot of wounds to spare. They've got pretty okay saves, 3+ armor saves, and possibly a 4+ invulnerable save, with the exception of the Neurothrope, which does have a 3+ invulnerable save, or the Tyranid Prime, which has no invulnerable save whatsoever. So, obviously you can see the problem with this, because this is a Raven Guard successor chapter, and Eliminators are going to be on the field, and characters holding the Raven Guard special sniper relics are going to be equipped on the battlefield, which means they are going to be able to target my characters. Doesn't matter if they're going to be 10 wounds or less, they will be targeted. Simply because I did bring Tyrant Guard for this list, as you can see on the list. I always bring Tyrant Guard, but Tyrant Guards are still working off the old bodyguard rules, where the characters can still be targeted, but the wounds need to be passed off onto the Tyrant Guard on a 2+. So that's the detriment of having a the codex. So for this game, I chose to put in my Hive Guard. So this is the current list I'm playing right now. It does not have Hive Guard, but if you'd like to know the combinations of the Hive Guard, how I use them, this is where you want to listen in on. So my usual Hive Guard tactic is I will have 6 Hive Guard supported by a Warrior Prime. Then the Warrior Prime is going to be Leviathan. The Hive Guard themselves are going to be Kronos. And then supported by a Neurothrope from the Kronos to give them that psychic power. The Kronos special psychic power to give them exploding 6s. In combination with that, I have a Maleceptor from the Leviathan detachment to take advantage of his synaptic linchpin, so that they can every time they roll a 6 to wound, they get an extra additional AP -1, as well as they can re-roll their damage D3, which is very, very important. That's the main reason why I have the Maleceptor on there. As well as the Tervigon in the HQ slot. They are definitely going to be taking their synaptic linchpin. The synaptic linchpin ability to re-roll wound rolls of 1 and 2. So that is going to be something that's pretty important and pretty. My gosh, it's getting which is going to be extremely important in this battle because Space Marines, yeah, no matter what anyone says, they're tough buggers. So, game started off pretty well. I took first turn. I realized that there was a large contingent of aggressors and incursors in the center of the battlefield. As you would do with the Raven Guard Successor chapter, you want to be surging up and taking objectives as as aggressively as you can. So that little bubble in the center had aggressors, incursors, and his executioner, his Lord Executioner, the guy with the big sword. And apparently that Lord Executioner did have an ability that an aura, like some sort of targetable ability, where it would allow him to advance and charge. So first turn of shooting, Hive Guard activated the Tyranid Warrior activated his Swarm Commander, giving them full rerolls. Psychic powers went off for the Kronos without a hitch from the Neurothrope, so giving them exploding sixes to hit. And the Maleceptor and the Tervigon with the Synaptic Linchpin chose to give that to the Hive Guard. And then I used one command point to proc in their, I believe, a stratagem. I cannot remember for the life of me the name of the stratagem, but it does give a further, every 6 you roll to hit gives you 2 additional hits. So in combination with the Tyranid Warrior Primes, the Synaptic Linchpin, it does mean that the Hive Guard, for every 6 they roll to hit, will be giving you 3 additional hits, as well as that first 6 that you rolled will be giving you an auto wound as well. That is from the Synaptic Linchpin ability of the Tyranid Warrior Prime. And yeah, it really came in handy because I was able to clean up that Aggressor Squad, that Incursor Squad, and also the Lord Adjudicator, I believe he's called, or Lord Executioner, guy with the big sword. Even though he did have to use transhuman physiology on the Lord Adjudicator to try and even attempt to keep him alive, because he was a very integral part of the army. And the Hive Guard did their jobs and wiped those 3 units off the field. First turn, dealing a crippling blow to my opponent, at which point my Tyranids was able to move up without anything trying to charge him, and for whatever reason my opponent left a small little gap where I could charge his Warlord, which was a chaplain on bike. So this chaplain on bike, right, I had to double check and recheck with him a few times that he did not have any defensive relics or buffs. So I was very concerned that he might have like some sort of invulnerable save, some sort of Iron Halo, some sort of like Storm Shield. No, didn't have any of that. So this particular chaplain was extremely integral to his army because he had exactly 3 auras on him that it was giving out. I believe it was a +1 to hit, reroll to hit, reroll to wound, and also a further advance and charge ability. And those auras were expanded out to 9 inches. So this guy was really meant to be like, he is the buffing guy. And I was in a very golden opportunity to be able to charge him on the first turn. And I took it. It was an 8-inch charge, and I managed to make it. And I did have to combi charge his Space Marine bike squad, and his Blade Guard veterans. But so here's the thing, right? I took a gamble with this. I took a gamble that the Space Marine bike squad with their chainswords and the chaplain on bike wasn't going to do enough damage to really affect my Tyranids, but the -A3 power swords that the Blade Guards had were going to do that. So I went with all-out attack, first round, 6 attacks on the Blade Guards. I killed 2 of them, which was a bit disappointing, but hey, the Blade Guards, they're tough. They're very tough to get rid of. And because I killed 2 of them, the amount of damage and attacks that were coming at me was significantly lowered. They still managed to do about like 6 wounds onto my Tyranids, but that's okay. It didn't bracket him at all because I did have the adaptive physiology, the chitin, which gives them the 5+ invul and also counts as double wounds for brackets. So when I used my CP to have him fight again, I was able to hit at full efficiency against the chaplain, eliminating the chaplain and essentially ripping out the heart of his army in the first turn. And at that point, it was kind of my buddy there was really struggling because that was really the heart and soul of his army. And once that was gone, it was gone. It was very difficult for him to fight back. I believe at one point in the first shooting round he missed all his shots from his. It was a Primaris Predator, the Lancer version with the twin blast cannons and melters. He missed all his shots. Redemptor Dreadnought also very nearly missed all of his shots on the hero duel, and both the Blade Guard veterans and the bikes had to disengage. So I think at this point, right, in the shooting phase, because his eliminators hadn't come down from D-Strike yet, he was kind of going like, yeah, I'm probably not going to win this, or it's going to be a very tough fight. And I'm going to do what Space Marines do well, which is he had his Blade Guard and his attack and his bikes charge right down the center, through the middle, right into the heart of my swarm, like Forlorn Hope style. Just we ride out. And his main objective was he wanted to kill my Neurothropes because he knew that the Neurothropes, they've got 1 attack at strength 4, 1 damage. They're absolutely terrible. The one saving grace they have is their psychic powers and that they must be vulnerable save. Anything else, they'd be considered, oh my god, why would you ever take these? And he knew that. So that was what he was going for, which is an incredibly smart move, because if I could ram down a scythe hero duel down the gullet of your army, he can ram down, like, definitely a Space Marine bike squad and also Blade Guard veterans. Totally reasonable. And I think the thematic vision of that was just astounding. Like I love those moments in games. Like sometimes sometimes don't. To enjoy a game, you do not need to win, but to have those moments, that is something special. And that, like, at that point, like, I don't. If that worked and that crippled my army enough, and I lost because of that, I think I'd be pretty happy. I think I would be very satisfied. That was a extremely gutsy move, and that is something a Space Marine would do. They would not take the losses down like lying down, and they would definitely go out and meet the enemy head on at that point. So that was his first turn. Second turn, much the same thing. His Lancer was extremely close to the front line. I believe that was a mistake by him to advance it. He only advanced it 6 inches, but it was just enough for my Swarm Lord to get a charge off. And he just obliterated that Lancer. Just went, boop, flipped it over. And this was when second turn was... I was kind of dilly-dallying a bit. My South Hero Duel had already died because the Redemptor Dreadnought charged it and killed it the last round and didn't take any damage from it, which I was fine with because the South Hero Duel already did so much work for me. So I was happy with him going the way he did. The Hive Guard, by this point, I was very low in command points, so I couldn't do much of the combinations that I wanted to do. So they really cut into the damage potential in the next few rounds, but they were still doing work. They were still a massive threat to him and just whittling down his Marines in my side of the board. So this was a lengthways battle. So much of his army he put way back, way in the back, to kind of like stave off the hive guard a little bit, but his forces started coming in piecemeal. So I was able to really focus down those forces and isolate them from the rest of his army. And yeah, I think that was the main focal point of this battle. The main like teaching point of this battle for him was that you you have to be careful with Space Marines because they have a lot of different units which move at different paces, and I believe in my head, Space Marines, when they attack, they should come in as a tide of power armor, not little small skirmishes and units like hitting lightly, like hitting lightly on like a couple of units. They need to come in as a group, as a tactical force, and attack as a whole. Um, and unfortunately, with the way that his army planned out, with the Blade Guards being on foot, but the attack bys being so much faster than them, and even the Redemptor not being able to catch up until quite late on, um, it just turned out like that, where his infantry and his objectives secured was mostly gone by the end of the battle. There, I think he only had one squad, and he had the Redemptor and one unit of Eliminators. The Eliminators came down. They did a whole buttload of damage to the Swarm Lord. The Swarm Lord was basically on one wound, and he was just looking for a place to die. Essentially, I wanted him to go into combat and like kill as many things as he could on his last death throes. And I think end of turn 2 or beginning of turn 3 was where we called it at that point. It was an incredibly fun game, very tense, but my turns were able to win out on top just because of the contributions of the Hive Guard and I wouldn't say tactical misplay, but I would say it is a trap that many newer Space Marine players fall into, where they do have this varied amount of units, but they don't take into consideration the speed at which they go to. So the bikes are going to go all forward, and they got isolated and destroyed. And your infiltrating units also need to be properly supported. They can't be left out like to fend for themselves. It doesn't work like that. Like Space Marines need to be in a group, in a cohesive force that can properly support them and give them multiple threats for the enemy to think about. So I was playing quite a swarmy Tyranid list. So it was the exact opposite for him. I felt like I was always the attacker, and I was always pushing and advancing and testing him at every front. And some of those fronts, unfortunately, the Space Marine weaknesses started to crack, which was maybe some of his units didn't have an invul save where they really should have. Transhuman physiology wasn't as effective as it should have been because of my synaptic linchpin ability from the Tervigon to be able to reroll ones and twos in the wound roll. And that initial strike of the Space Marines are incredibly reliant on their characters. So I killed 2 characters off the get-go. His entire army felt the full weight of that and was very lost until about second turn. And that really showed in the points cost, in the victory points at the end of the fight, and also the amount of casualties he took. Yeah, so if I were to say one advice to Space Marine players that are fighting against Tyranids, and you are going to use this character sniping tactic, which my friend was experimenting with, which I think is incredibly deadly to Tyranids, I would say be very careful on what kind of front you present to Tyranid armies, because they are going to have Hive Guard. They are going to have the capability to destroy or maul units out of line of sight and at the first behest of whatever hive mind you encounter. Be very careful about threats you present. You need to have multiple threats that are very clear and difficult so that he needs to make a choice on which units to target and which units to prioritize on. If you present only one option, it's very easy. If you present two options, it's difficult. If it's three options, well, at some point in the game, they're going to make a mistake, and you need to capitalize on that. That's the get-go. That's the advice for that is the advice for Space Marines against Tyranids. And Tyranid players, my advice to you is do not be afraid to lose your big monstrous creatures. Do not lose them carelessly, but don't be afraid to send them in piecemeal to distract his army and to stall in advance. So what I mean by that is the concept of, if I have charged my Scythe Hierodule into something, or my Scythe Hierodule is blocking the street, they cannot move around it. They have to shoot at it, kill it, or charge it. At that point, units that would have been like charging down that streetway or alleyway, they've missed their movement. And that is absolutely massive for an army like Space Marines, which tactically speaking, don't have many ways of increasing their speed and increasing their transport capabilities, unlike Tyranids with the Swarm Lord, with our stratagems, and so on. So we're always moving. We know that objectives and secondaries are the key to battle. Space Marine players and Space Marine armies tend to revolve more of the killing and also standing still and being a bit more defensive and passive in the beginning stage of the game, which I'm not saying is incorrect, but that is a mindset that us as Tyranid players can expect and use to exploit against Space Marines. So bear that in mind, because at that game I lost in first turn. I lost my Scythe Hierodule. Second turn, I almost lost my Tyrant Guard. Third turn, I was wholly ready to throw in my my Tervigon into the jaws of the enemy to stall them for another turn. So that's 3 turns. There's only 5 turns in the game, so the Space Marines would have to either advance for 1 or 2 turns to catch up in terms of victory points and primaries and secondaries, for them to even just reach like their primaries or secondaries. And by that point, they had 1 unit of objective secured, where I still had my Hormagaunts, my 2 big Termagant blobs, and my Tyranid warriors were still up on the board. So it was extremely difficult for them to even just hold objectives, let alone try and take mine. So that's the thing. So that was my lesson for this week. Wow, I'm a bit scatterbrained right now because of Christmas. I've been very hungover. But I managed to have this wonderful game. So my lesson was to not be afraid of losing your monstrous creatures, especially if it's for a tactical victory. Be aggressive on the objectives, and also understand the mindset of a Space Marine player and a Space Marine army, because that will help you immeasurably in planning and also understanding what is a high value target, when to try and eliminate it, and when the opportunity presents itself to capitalize on it. All right, guys. All right, this is a short, sweet video. Thank you very much for having listened to this old hive mind talking about his experiences back into Warhammer 40k, back into a new community, and very excited. And I'm looking forward to another year of playing more games in my local game shop and providing you guys with some hopefully very good information on how to improve your games with Tyranids. Very excited about the new the rules coming out for Tyranids, which is the or is it the units of renown? Not the units of renown, the armies of renown in the upcoming White Dwarf. So look forward to me trying that out. But in the meantime, I'll be stepping back from using Hive Guard and retiring the Hive Guard for a bit, and I'll be trying my best to play around with a more tactical Tyranid army. So the list should be the full list has been like showing up on the background of the screen. Write it down, check it out yourself. Comment down below if you find that like something's wrong with it or you have any suggestions on how to improve it. And I will see you on the next After Action podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Hit that bell icon and follow us on Instagram at DragonToothMakes. Tally ho! Happy New Year! Happy Christmas! And this is Bill signing off. Have a good night, everyone.